The dropship groaned as it sliced through the dense, gray-green skies of Tarkov 5. Rain streaked against its hull like acid needles, tapping an angry rhythm on the reinforced glass. Sergeant Captain Elias Vance didn't flinch. He sat rigid in his crash seat, arms crossed, jaw clenched. 30 seconds, the pilot crackled. Elias nodded once and glanced at his gear. Matte black armor scored with old shrapnel scars, plasma knife holstered at his thigh, and a combat rifle designed more for reliability than elegance. Function over flash. Always. Outside, the jungle stretched endlessly, thick, tangled, and wet with something more than just rain. It had that look, that weight. Alive in all the wrong ways. He'd seen worlds like this before. Jungles that watched you. Jungles that waited. The hatch hissed open. Steam billowed in, carrying a sour, fungal stench. Elias stepped out into the muck, boots sinking with a wet squelch. The sky above was the color of old bruises. Welcome to Tarkov 5. Outpost Aurelius stood like a rotting tooth in the greenery, walls patched with charred plating, half-buried turrets, antennae flickering like dying fireflies. A squad of Empire troops snapped to attention as he approached. Bright armor. Standard issue blue and chrome. Gleaming under jungle rain. Idiots. Sergeant Captain Vance, a voice called. He turned. Strategos Valmerex Thal, tall and draped in ceremonial gold-plated battlewear, approached with 2 aides in tow. A pair of drones hovered behind him, capturing everything for some internal holocaust. Thal looked down his narrow nose, expression sour. Ah, the Terran. Welcome, finally. Elias didn't salute. Didn't realize I was late. You are. 3 Imperial firebases have fallen in the last cycle. The Tarkai insurgents are more resourceful than projected. Thal said the word, resourceful, like he'd stepped in something. They're locals. Jungle fighters. They should be underestimated, right? Elias replied flatly. Thal's jaw twitched. Our doctrine, refined across centuries, has faced far worse. Elias let the silence hang, then glanced around. Half the outpost defenses were running on emergency power. Troops moved with that subtle, jerky panic of soldiers who'd seen too many friends die too quickly. I've reviewed your battle plan, Elias continued. Your men are lined up like parade columns. You're broadcasting your approach on open frequencies. They must see our presence. Fear our strength. Elias stepped closer. The jungle doesn't care how strong you are. It just kills slow. Quiet. And always. Thal waved a dismissive hand. I'll be leading the 77th Royal Legion's forward strike tomorrow at dawn. Our finest. You and your humans will observe. Observe? Of course. We'll show you how civilized armies win. Elias stared at him, unreadable. Requesting tactical autonomy for the Black Talons. My team. 10 operators, all XSF. Let us sweep ahead, prep the zone. Thal sniffed. Denied. You'll coordinate post-operation logistics. Leave combat to the professionals. You're walking into a meat grinder, Elias warned. Glory is forged in hardship, Thal replied, turning with a flourish. No, Elias thought. Glory gets men like you killed. The next day, dawn crept in like a bruise. Fog rolled low across the tree canopy. The jungle whispered. From the command deck of a hovering barge, Thal addressed a sea of Imperial troops, 5,000 armored elites in perfect rows. Standards raised, banners unfurled, suits shimmering with polished tech. The air thrummed with motivational audio, anthems, war drums, declarations of superiority. Elias watched from the side, flanked by his own. The Black Talons stood in the shadows, silent, masked, dressed in adaptive cloaks that blurred their shapes. Predators watching prey strut. Thal's voice boomed over loudspeakers. Today, we cleanse this jungle of savagery. For the Empire! Cheers erupted. The formation moved out, disappearing into green. 3 hours later, the screaming started. At first, it came in fragments. Then full channels, panicked, overlapping calms. Explosions. Gunfire. Then static. On the command screen, bright blue markers representing Thal's units began blinking out. Not in combat patterns, disappearing, vanishing into the dense sprawl of the jungle. Movement flanking Bravo Company! They're in the trees! My armor's melting, they've got. We can't see them, it's like they're everywhere. A new feed opened, a drone hovering above the vanguard. It caught brief flashes of chaos. Imperial troops firing blindly into thick vines. Something dragged one soldier upward, gone in a second. Another exploded from a hidden biomass mine. Screams filled the air. No formations. No retreat. Just death. 70% casualty rate. An aide whispered, pale. Thal stood frozen, knuckles white on the rail. Elias leaned closer, voice calm. Shock and awe, huh? Thal didn't respond. Elias turned to his team, who had been listening with grim faces. Gear up. You have no authority. Thal began. Elias didn't look back. I'm not asking. In the barracks, the Talons moved like ghosts. No shouting. No fanfare. Armor hissed shut, helmets locked, weapons checked. Their gear was ugly, scarred, and silent. No gold. No chrome. Target? Asked Vega, his second in command. East Quadrant. Survivor extraction. Kill anything between us and them. Full lethal? Elias nodded once. The jungle made it lethal first. The Talons vanished into the green like smoke. 10 shadows. No anthem. At dusk, Elias stood outside the outpost, watching the jungle glow faintly with flickers of fire and distant plasma bursts. Somewhere out there, his team was moving, cutting a path through madness. Saving the very men who had mocked them hours ago. Behind him, Thal approached slowly, his posture collapsed under failure. If I authorized your soldiers, he said, voice shaking, how soon could they deploy? Elias didn't turn. They're already gone, he said. The jungle was quieter now. Not peaceful, never that, but quieter, like it was holding its breath. Elias Vance crouched beneath a tangle of razor-leafed vines, rain pattering softly on his helmet. Ahead, through thermal scope, the target zone flickered, 6 heat signatures, clustered in a shallow depression. Wounded. 2 moved. 4 didn't. He tapped his throat mic. Vega. Eyes on package. Looks like 2 survivors. A click confirmed. Black Talons moved without sound. They were smoke in motion, shadow in flesh. Camouflage shifted to match the oily greens and browns around them. Biomass sensors guided their steps through terrain that had already swallowed hundreds of Imperial soldiers. But the Talons didn't charge. They crept. They stalked. Vance raised his rifle. A blink of red on HUD, movement. He didn't fire. Instead, he pointed. Vega followed the signal and disappeared into the mist. 6 seconds later, a suppressed crack, like a twig snapping in reverse. 1 insurgent down. Vance advanced. The 2 survivors weren't in good shape. One had lost a leg below the knee, his armor fused to burnt flesh. The other sat slumped, helmet cracked, eyes wide in a silent scream. Imperial, Vance whispered. You're getting out. Quiet now. They didn't argue. Couldn't. One whimpered. The other just nodded. Vega slung the injured man across his back. The team faded backward into the green, leaving no trace. Back at the extraction point, the dropship arrived low, barely visible above the canopy. Vance loaded the wounded. He stayed silent as medics took over. The moment they lifted off, his boots turned back toward the tree-ling. Mission complete. No casualties. 8 insurgents neutralized. Time to redeploy. Strategos Thal was waiting when they returned. He stood in the outpost's command bunker, eyes bloodshot, armor dulled with sweat and soot. The room stank of shame and defeat. Reports blinked in red across hollow screens. The 77th Royal Legion had lost 72% of its total strength. That number rose hourly. You disobeyed a direct order, Thal began. Elias removed his helmet, revealing a face drawn and silent, half lit by old battle scars. "You're welcome," he replied. Thal's lips parted, then shut again. He turned to the screens. "Your team recovered 8 survivors. Cleared 2 enemy nests. We can't verify the body count, but you don't need to. You need results, not rituals." Thal stiffened. "You humans, you fight like animals." Vance stepped forward. "No. We fight like people who've run out of options." The following days unfolded like controlled demolition. Black Talons began securing perimeter sectors the Empire had abandoned. Their movements were surgical: insert, cleanse, extract. Drone feeds captured bursts of light and motion, insurgents dropping before they could even scream. The jungle no longer belonged to the enemy. Not fully. Vance never allowed complacency. Every kill was mapped. Every trap learned. Every patrol logged. The team adapted to the jungle faster than any algorithm. They burned roots that healed, gassed burrows that reeked of spores, used the enemy's own soundbait tactics against them. Word spread fast. Empire officers who had once rolled their eyes now whispered requests for Terran assistance. At night, Elias sat outside the barracks, blade in hand, sharpening the edge out of habit. Vega approached, handing him a filtered mug of something warm and bitter. "Second zone's clear," she said. "Minimal resistance. Minimal so warning," Elias muttered. "You think they're testing us?" "They're watching. Trying to learn. Same thing I do." She nodded, then after a pause, "This remind you of Mars?" Elias didn't answer right away. Mars had been different: red soil, thinner air, but the same type of war. Civilian masks? Trap corridors. Kids wired with explosives. It haunted him less than it should. "They never learn," he said at last. On the 6th day, they intercepted a Tarkai war party, 12 hostiles, embedded in a ravine. Standard protocol would have been air support. Vance said no. "We do it quiet." They approached under cover of darkness. Vega dropped 2 with silenced fire. Elias planted charges to block escape routes. When the insurgents noticed the trap, it was already over. One enemy tried to crawl away. Vance caught him by the collar, dragged him into the open. "You speak basic?" he asked. The alien hissed. His blood shimmered green in the dirt. "You saw what we did," Elias continued. "Tell your people. We're not Empire. We're Earth. There's a difference." The insurgent spat before dying. Later, inside the command room, Thal watched new surveillance feeds in silence. The jungle looked different now. The chaos had order. Imperial losses had slowed. Insurgents had begun retreating from zones the Talons passed through. Vance stood nearby, reviewing maps. "I suppose," Thal said slowly, "you want more resources." "No," Elias replied. "I want less oversight. You want independence. I want efficiency. You keep sending parades into slaughterhouses." Thal turned to face him, eyes narrow. "What are you really after, Terran?" Vance held his gaze. "To finish this war before it finishes us." The next morning, a Senate signal pinged the outpost, formal recognition of the Terran Strike Force as co-command under tactical emergency provisions. Imperial pride bent just enough to survive. Thal handed Elias the updated orders without comment. Black Talons didn't celebrate. They cleaned weapons, recalibrated HUDs, and prepared for the next operation. In the jungle, something had shifted. The Tarkai no longer saw an enemy they could harass and humiliate. They saw predators, efficient, merciless, and invisible. The balance had tipped. At dusk, Vega found Elias sitting alone again, watching the jungle sway under violet skies. "You think we'll ever be done with this kind of war?" she asked. Elias didn't look at her. "No. Just better at it." She handed him a data slate, details for the next mission. East Jungle Node. Insurgent Command Group, possibly their hive nexus. Elias exhaled slowly. "Then we hit them where it hurts." "Same way as Mars?" He nodded. But this time, we bring fire. The jungle boiled with heat and static. Elias Vance knelt at the edge of a blackened ridge, sweat trickling down his spine inside armor that hadn't left his body in 3 days. His HUD pulsed red, hostile motion. Below, past the moss-laced trees and fungal ridges, the Tarkai command hive pulsed like a cancer, low, domed, crawling with activity. This was it. The enemy's nerve center. Behind him, Vega adjusted the charge packs on her rifle. Her voice crackled over comms. You sure about this? No, Vance said. But it's the last play we've got. The hive was partially organic, grown and reinforced with native stone, its outer wall a tangle of thorns and resin. Tarkai guards moved with practiced silence, but their heads turned more often now, nervous, searching the canopy. Fear had finally taken root. The talons had been bleeding them dry for days. Now came the artery cut. Vance signaled. The team moved in layers, silent, tight, synchronized. 4 approached from the western cliff, 2 slid under the root web to breach from below. Vance and Vega circled wide to flank from the blind side, where the hive met a steep ravine soaked in methane runoff. They weren't here to capture. This was exorcism. Inside the hive, the air was thicker than blood. Fungal lights pulsed along the walls. Movement above, climbers on the ceiling. Vega pointed, and a high-velocity spike tore one down without a sound. They entered the war room, a wide chamber humming with bioservers and map spores projecting local data. In the center, the Tarkai warcaller stood over a live map of the sector, his crest crowned in bone. He didn't hear them until Elias was close enough to see his breath fog the air. Target confirmed, Elias whispered. The warcaller spun, claws raised. Vance fired once. The body dropped. The team planted the virus charges across the network nodes, AI-seeded firewalls that would destroy all tactical data, disrupt insurgent communication, and send a false transmission. Hive lost. Flee or die. Final sweep, Vega said. Clear. Vance activated the detonator. Let's go. They were halfway out when the hive roared. A second wave of Tarkai ambushed from the tunnels, dozens of them. Too many. Move! Vance shouted, tossing a gas canister. Mist hissed out, blinding the enemy in seconds. Vega dragged one of the wounded toward the exit. Elias covered the retreat, dropping hostiles with clean, single bursts. No panic. Just numbers. They reached the ridge as the charges blew. The hive flared behind them, green flame licking the sky, ash falling like snow. Somewhere beneath the smoke, centuries of war doctrine and tribal command melted to nothing. The Talons watched without celebration. War wasn't a victory. It was work. Back at Outpost Aurelius, Strategos Thal stood in front of a Senate holocaster, reading a pre-written speech. He looked composed, polished. The wreckage of the campaign nowhere in sight. The victory at Tarkoth 5 marks a turning point for the Empire's campaign in the outer sectors, he declared. Our coordinated efforts, backed by strategic resolve and imperial unity, have overcome a treacherous resistance. Elias watched from the shadows of the barracks, arms folded. No mention of the Black Talons. No mention of Earth. Just flags, titles, and the usual rot. Later, Thal found him outside, watching the jungle smolder on the horizon. You don't look satisfied, the Strategos said. Vance turned. We ended a war you started badly. You're welcome. I did what the Empire required. No. You did what your pride required. Vance stepped closer. I watched your men die by the hundreds because they were too clean for dirty work. You paraded them into an ambush and hoped arrogance would carry the day. Thal stiffened. We had no precedent for this resistance. Yes, you did. Vance's eyes hardened. It was called Earth. That night, a sealed data chip was delivered to the Imperial High Command. It contained helmet cam footage, sensor logs, combat breakdowns, and environmental assessments, all tied to the operations led by the Black Talons. A week later, Earth's diplomatic channel lit up. In the Senate Tower, a quiet vote passed under urgent security provision, full strategic autonomy for Terran units operating in fringe war zones. An addendum followed, equal military representation in interspecies defense councils. It was political theater, but it meant one thing: fear. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when given free rein. In a private hangar, Vance prepped the Talons for extraction. No medals. No press. Just orders. New theater? Vega asked. New world, Elias replied. She paused, hand on her rifle. Do they get it now? The Empire? No, Elias said. But they know we're not under them. The team boarded the gunship in silence. Elsewhere, on a quiet moon circling a shattered planet, Jurex Thrankal sipped bitter root brew and watched the transmission again. Vance and his team moving through jungle like wolves. Efficient. Relentless. Calm. The footage ended with the hive explosion, then static. Jurex leaned back. They didn't win, he said to no one. The humans just didn't lose. He raised his cup. To Earth. May they stay on our side.